Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to week 7 in CA 121, Culinary Skills and Techniques. Chef Suzanne and I welcome you to another fine live session, everybody. Awfully excited to have all of you here, Crystal and Deidre. It's pretty cool to acknowledge we are officially in the second half of this course. So good job to everybody that is excelling in this class, and there are quite a few of you. We're awfully proud of it, and it's fantastic to see you doing so well. And for those of you that are still struggling a little bit, there's a couple out there. Please remember you can do it. It is possible. Chef Suzanne and I are here to guide you and help you. We just communicate with us, and we'll be the first ones to jump into the fire with you and help you out. So congratulations to those that are, and hey, we're extending our hands to those that aren't. So welcome to week 7. Week 6 in review. Let's see, last week we had our midterms, so to speak, here in CA 121. Chef Suzanne and I kind of left that open for everybody to kind of see what happened. And I want to hear, Crystal, what about you? What'd you end up making, Crystal?
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken?
Fried chicken, green beans, macaroni, and gravy. I'm sorry, mashed potatoes and gravy.
Wow, good job. I bet Chef Suzanne probably gave you 100 on that one.
I haven't gotten my grade.
Oh, that's well, you know, she has an affinity for chicken, so what's that?
I think she knew my love of the fried chicken.
Yeah, I know.
I feel you. I love chicken too. I can eat it all day long, every day.
So there you go. Yeah, you've got a friend in the battle. That's pretty cool. How'd the fried chicken come out for you, Crystal?
I did it different. I didn't have breadcrumbs. I worked with what I had, so I just floured it. I guess you can call bread it. It came out good, but I prefer the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
I really do, and I thought I had some, and the week was kind of went by fast, so I just worked with what I had.
You know what? A lot of times in culinary arts, we find ourselves in a position where we're forced to work with what we have on hand in order to make it happen. And so that's a good attitude, and that's a good learning experience. I've been in numerous positions over the years. We had a lady that walked in to the restaurant. This is a very fine dining restaurant. She needed hors d'oeuvres for a pop-up dinner party she was having at her house. And we had literally nothing on hand except for some proteins. And then I found some goat cheese in the walk-in. And, you know, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? How can I make an hors d'oeuvre for this woman? And ended up rolling it, you know, mixed a little egg in there, rolled it, then floured it, egged it, and put panko on it and fried it, and gave it to the lady, and fried goat cheese. And she was absolutely amazed by the experience. And I think we had a little chipotle, raspberry chipotle demi on the line. And so, boom, we were famous. But that attitude that you have, Crystal, is really what it takes to succeed. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
Absolutely. And I think that's where some of your best ideas come from sometimes, is out of necessity like that. I have coated, ironically enough, chicken. I have breaded chicken with all sorts of things. Just use what you've got. So, you know, if you didn't have breadcrumbs, goldfish crackers, Ritz crackers, potato chips, smashed pretzels. You know, that's just the great thing about it, is the resourcefulness.
Yeah.
You know, it's necessity.
It's kind of an interesting attitude that you have to have as a chef. There are certain people that will say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're out, we can't do it." And then the successful chefs, the motivated chefs, the ones that want to succeed, are the ones that say, "Hey, I'm going to make it happen with what I got." And sometimes that's what it takes. Deidre, what about you?
I did a sauteed chicken breast, and I used like a different seasoning method. I used dry mustard and onion powder. And I did quickly, and like I just stated, I misread it. I thought it said or starch, and I just did broccoli, so I missed my starch component.
Okay. Well, that happens. You know what? I like the hot mustard. I'm a big believer. I like to use that in dry rubs a lot for smoking meats.
Oh, really? Us mustard.
Oh, that's a good job, Deidre. I appreciate the feedback. How'd you guys do with the knowledge checks this week?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they're okay.
Did you get them all right?
They're getting easier.
Yeah.
Getting in there.
No, wait. They're either getting easier or you're learning more.
It's staying in there.
Deidre, what about you? How'd you like the knowledge check this week?
It was good. I actually had to, think back a little bit, but the conversions, it's getting easier because I do paperwork at my job, so I have to do those conversions from the ounces to the gallons for our milk count.
Oh,
so
good.
The conversions is getting easier, and it's actually helping me at work.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because a lot of times you learn these things in school and you're like, and it's, now we have somebody that's actually using them in the workplace. And the further that you get along in your career, especially in culinary arts, the more that you will be referring back to those conversions. And
because our feeding chart is going from cups to ounces, so it's actually, like I said, it's helping more.
So, what type of facility do you work at?
I work for Head Start. We service kids 0 to 5, and we have to cook sometimes 2 separate meals for the early and the older kids, because of course the babies can't have the raw vegetables and raw fruits.
Right.
So that's where the calculations and stuff coming at.
Oh, wow, that's a wonderful organization. Yeah. Good group of people. So yeah, thank you, Deidre. I appreciate your feedback on that.
Mm-hmm.
Chef Suzanne, how was week 6 for you?
Very good.
Other than all the other stuff that
I was pretty busy, that is for sure. I'm pretty good this week. Saw a lot of deep frying and folks wanting to try something that may have given them some stress or some trouble the first time they did it, like fritters. So they may have had issues where their fritters may have been a little tough, so they tried fritters again. So, and I love that, to try new things. So it's very good this week.
Oh, that's nice. That's good to hear. Any other comments about week 6? Anyone?
It was a good week.
Good week.
I had a little problem with my gravy again. I think, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but I noticed it got thicker toward the end after we were done eating. So I don't know how to get it thicker right away. Or do I have to let it sit for a while?
What can you repeat that question, Krista? I missed the first part of it.
My gravy is still coming out a little too thin.
Uh-huh.
This time around, it didn't thicken up until towards the end, after 45 minutes, it cooled down, it got thicker.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's the way it's supposed to be.
How did you thicken your gravy?
With a little bit of flour.
Okay, that might be your first mistake right there. You really should be making a roux. Do you remember how to make the roux?
With the fat, don't you put the flour inside the fat?
Half flour, half fat, and then you need to make sure you cook that out for about a minute or so, because all the flour granulars need to be thoroughly coated in the oil. And then you can either add your hot stock to that, or you can add that to your hot stock, either one. And you need to stir vigorously and allow it to come to a boil, and then that will tell you how thick it's going to be, whether you need to add some more roux or not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because it started boiling, but it started caramelizing. So I took it off. I thought that I had boiled it. So I took it off and it got thick, but until way after, once it really cooled down.
Yeah, try to avoid just using straight flour. Make sure you make the roux, add your liquid, allow it to come to a boil, stir it out real well, and also cooking that roux will help prevent any types of lumps from forming in your gravy, and that will help you out quite a bit as well. But once it comes to a boil on the stove and after you stirred it for a couple of minutes, that will be its true consistency. And yes, as it cools, it's going to congeal and become slightly thicker because that fat in the roux cools down a little bit and it does become thicker, but it should reach its proper service consistency, nappe, while it's still on the stove.
Okay, I gotta work on that.
Keep practicing. Sound good?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. And then once again, I just wanted to touch on one other thing. There's a couple of people that are still struggling in this course. Just remember that Chef Suzanne and I are here to help you succeed. Reach out, talk to us, let us know what we can do to help you. That's our number one priority is helping you succeed in this course. It's extremely important. Before we begin our class this evening, there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. One will be our classroom participation policy, which we all need to start following effective. Well, we can't start it on this actual live session, but our next live session, we need to make sure that we are following this policy. And then basically what this relates to, it's about professionalism. Professionalism, cooks always had this old image of this guy with rolled up sleeves and a small hat, smoking a cigarette, flipping pancakes. And that's not what we're about. We are professionals. We're financial managers. We're people managers. We're creative. And we also have a proper image that needs to be professed. And we need to start doing that here at Escoffier rather than when you get into industry. So your professional image is extremely important. That's not only the way you communicate, it's the way that you carry yourself, it's the way that you address other people, and it's also the things that are going on in the background and everywhere else. So we need to be careful about that. When we attend our live sessions, everyone, let's make sure that we're dressed properly in clean pressed chef coats. That is a requirement. You should have a neutral background. We don't want to see any, not necessarily in this class, we haven't had too much of a challenge, but we want to make sure that we don't have any odd things in the background. And we've seen quite a few odd things in the background over the years. And I don't know that we're really in a place that we can share that information with what some of those things were, but and make sure there's nothing controversial in the background that might offend somebody else. Make sure, your friends and your family members should be they should be out of the shot. It's a professional situation, so we want to make sure. Then we understand, we do it too. Every now and then you need to take a sip of water if you've been talking a little bit, and I'm guilty of that, and that's perfectly fine. But you want to avoid any type of eating, excessive drinking, anything like that during the live show. So we don't want to see you with a cigarette hanging out of your mouth. That's not appropriate. And then, what you get out of the live session is what you put into the live session. And it's very, very important that if you have questions or if you have comments regarding something that we're saying, to participate. We are here to support you. So if you don't completely understand something, make sure you take a moment and you say, hey, Chef Suzanne, I don't get what you're saying. It's our responsibility to help you. So take advantage of that and do that. Make sure that when you are at the live session, make sure that's what you're doing, right? It's not so prevalent in this class, but we do have other people that watch TV or do other things. And the live session is for your own good to help you succeed. So make sure that you stay focused on the live session and make sure that's the only thing that you are doing at the time. Very, very important. And then let's see let's go back here and make sure I covered everything here. And then make sure that you do have enough energy to stay awake for the entire 1 hour period. That's a pretty critical thing. We have had a couple of people that have dozed off. I think Chef Suzanne was sharing, and this happened to us in the live session the other night. Someone dozed off. Next thing you know, the cat's in the monitor, or was it a dog? I don't remember.
It was actually a dog. Just happened to be moving the computer all around. It was so weird.
So just remember, it's your professional image that you portray. So we would appreciate it if you take a moment and follow those simple rules. We also like to see people when we're talking to them. It's really nice. We don't have to start that right away this evening, but next week, you know, if we could see you and talk to you and have you participate, everybody learns just so much more throughout the whole process. And speaking of learning more, I know that for some people, time management can become a bit of a challenge, especially when you're trying to juggle your regular life activities. You have children, you have jobs, you have things that go on. So time management becomes really critical. We mention that multiple times here at Escoffier because once you get yourself into industry, a sign of a successful chef is someone who has mastered time management. And as Chef Suzanne will, I'm sure she'll even want to jump into this as well, when you are doing a large banquet or you are feeding hundreds of customers and you have cooks running all over your kitchen, you have purveyors going in and out, you have the phone ringing, and the chef is calm, going right down the middle because he's managed his time extremely well. And that is a trait that will carry you all the way through. Chef Suzanne, do you have any comments on time management?
I do. I'm a clipboard chef. I normally have pages and pages of information, especially with events, of things that have to be done at certain days of the week, certain times. And I cross off what's been done. I may need to change, some information. And my world, I have been known to cry if I walk in the cooler or something and I set my clipboard down and then I can't find it. And there's stuff going on and my clipboard, everyone has to stop everything they're doing to find my clipboard. So staying on top of things and that time management and that organization is just huge. It is so important. It is so important.
The clipboard, I think, is a wonderful idea. What we do in industry a lot when we get into work, my routine when I get into work in industry is, number one, is I walk the facility. I go through all the walk-ins, and then I sit down with a cup of coffee and I take a look at all the day's activities. I look at the schedules. This way I can get a good grip on what's going on. Now what that becomes an elephant. There's no way I could tackle the entire elephant sitting there with a cup of coffee. So what I do, just like Chef Suzanne, is I grab a piece of paper or a clipboard and I'll make myself a list, a prep list. And I think all of you should begin doing that in this class. So sit down on Wednesday when the class page opens, sit down and make yourself a list that says, I have to do a knowledge check, I have to participate in a discussion forum, I have to prep this, and I have to cook that. And then we have a live session Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then keep referring back to that list as your week goes along. And then next to that list, each item say, hey, okay, I'm going to do that knowledge check on Thursday morning. And then I'm going to prep my food out on Friday. And before you know it, your life will be so put together. It's all about prioritizing what you need. Everyone needs to remember that you are building a better tomorrow, and the commitment that you make today will be a direct reflection upon your success tomorrow. So roll up your sleeves, prioritize what's going on, eliminate distractions in your life. If you have people that are bringing drama into your life and constantly have a crisis, put them to the side for a little while. Those crises will deal with themselves, and focus on building a better tomorrow for yourself in the process. If anybody has any questions about that, Chef Suzanne and I have a lot more tips that can really help you out to succeed. We'd like to see everybody start getting your assignments in by Sunday of each week. Sunday. This way, Chef Suzanne has plenty of time to take a look at them. And you have plenty of time to be able to make any type of resubmissions that you need to elevate that grade, because that's what it's all about. Do you have anything to add on to that, Chef Suzanne?
I like the idea of turning in grades early. If that's just something that I like to do, is I've taken online classes too. I like that satisfaction of getting those assignments done and turned in, so that if you do need to makeup. You've got time. And if you don't, if it came out great the first time, that's great. That gives you more time to set it aside and not have to worry about it because you've already got it done.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, yes, there's time to fix it, but then there's also time to go, I did such a good job, I don't even have to fix it. So you know, then you can enjoy that extra time.
Those of you that are cooking Tuesday nights at 10:50, you know, those are when the mistakes happen. That's when the poor assignments get turned in, and that's when you have to wait for your grade. So those of you that do it leisurely on Sunday and Saturday and Friday, you are the ones that are rocking the course right now, and we want to see everybody in that same boat. You have to remember that when you walk into a restaurant, you don't have a seat at the table, and they don't give you a menu, and then you order something, and the server responds by saying, no, the chef isn't here yet. And then when he gets here, he's got to start prepping the food out because he's running late and he had some crises. It doesn't work that way in a professional environment when we are ready to serve the guest, when the guest is ready to be served. And that mentality needs to begin here in culinary school. So on to week 7, everyone. This is a really cool week. We are jumping into the swimming pool of braising. This week we're going to be braising vegetables 2 different ways, kind of a quick braise, and then another one will be a long braise. Next week we are getting into braising proteins, which is one of my most favorite ways to cook. Braised chicken is my favorite. Chef Suzanne, braised chicken.
You know, I do love the chicken, but I do love braised beef also. Short ribs.
Oh, yes.
I'm a sucker for some braised short ribs.
Yes, chicken coq au vin is, that is one of the most beautifully braised dishes you could think of. So let's take a look at our class page this week to find out what's going on here. Are we on the class page? Welcome to week 7. I hope everybody got a chance to take a look at the lovely intro video right up here. And then research materials this week are very, very applicable to everything that you are doing this week. So I would highly recommend taking a few moments to go through that research material. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to be here at the live session. We appreciate the 3 of you. And this week, we do have a discussion forum, right? It's instead of the discussion forum, it's actually called the kitchen table. The discussion forum, you're going to be talking about poaching in reference to specific recipes. You will find 2 recipes, one for poaching, one for braising, and you will share them with the class and discuss what makes them appealing to you and why you think they would do so well in your restaurant and with your customers. And as always with the discussion forum, your initial post is due no later than this Saturday by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That post is worth 6 points. Should you post your initial post after Saturday, each day you lose 1 point. Those points have a lot of weight in your final grade, so don't wait, don't procrastinate. So initial post is due by Saturday. You are required to respond to at least 2 other students' posts no later than the following Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, and each one of those responses is worth 2 points, for a total of 10 points for the discussion forum. Any questions about that? Did I say that pretty good, Chef Suzanne?
You did. You absolutely did.
I'm on a roll.
I like I like all the discussion forum information. I think those are fun.
Yeah, they're
that
cool.
networking and that sharing of information, that's good stuff.
And honestly, I really enjoy what the students write. Actually, I learn different perspectives from reading these discussion forums, and sometimes they're like, "Wow, that's really intelligent." So we appreciate it. It's good information for us as well. Going back to our class page, so we just talked about our discussion forum. We do have another conversions knowledge check. There will be some conversion information in the presentation that will be posted right down in this area following the class. And then this week's recipe, or this week's assignment, is going to be quick and long braised vegetables, which we're going to get into here in just a moment. I think I did everything. Did I do that right? Yeah.
You did. Now it's just the fun stuff, the nitty gritty, the food stuff.
The nitty gritty. So are we going to get into the nuts and bolts, or no, the potatoes and meat? Let's say that.
Yes. I think this is. I always say that. I always think that they're all. I think every week is fun. I think I like this particular week because this is one like everybody's sauteed before, or and you've deep fried, or you've seen pan frying. Braising is different. Lots of people have never braised or stewed before, and I think this one is where they go like, why have I not been doing this my whole life?
Right.
Where has this been all of my life? And that's what I enjoy so much about this particular week. So that's why I enjoy it.
I agree with what you're saying. And braising is such a commonly used technique in industry. You'd be amazed at how many dishes are actually braised when you go out to eat. It's a great way of taking some cuts of meat or some vegetables that really aren't palatable in their raw state or grilled state or sauteed state, and it makes them extremely tender, very moist, very juicy, very flavorful, and very palatable at the same time. Let's move on to our presentation this week. First thing we're going to take a look at is this conversion chart, which will be included in the weekly presentation to help you with your conversion knowledge check. All of the answers are basically right in here, just to give you a little hint. They do like to ask quite a bit about how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon. Do we know the answer to that? Hello? There are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, and they like to ask quite a bit how many tablespoons are in 1 cup. There are 16 tablespoons in a cup, and if there's 8 ounces in a cup, that means that each tablespoon is worth ½ ounce, right? Is what that equates to. So, 2 to 1.
I didn't realize there was so much information about tablespoons in a cup. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's it works well. For some reason, I've ended up with a lot of bakeries before and that kind of stuff. And when you're trying to figure out how many tablespoons are in butter and all that other kind of stuff, and this really helps break that information down.
I guess that's true. I guess it's just kind of one of those things that's just gets ingrained in your head really fast. It's teaspoons in a tablespoon, and tablespoons in an ounce, or
absolutely
how big a tablespoon is.
So keep practicing it, ladies and gentlemen. It's only going to get better. It's only going to get easier. Deidre and Crystal were talking about it, and they're saying, hey, they're not as hard anymore. The more you do it, the easier it's going to become for you. So keep trying, keep going. All your information to pass your easily complete your week 7 knowledge check is right here. And then braising, ladies and gentlemen, like Chef Suzanne and I were alluding to here just a moment ago, this is a fantastic cooking method. It is a cooking method that involves different styles of cooking. It's both wet and dry heats that are used. And commonly what we do is we'll use larger cuts of meat in the braising process versus stewing that we'll talk about here in just a moment. Stewing traditionally has smaller cuts of meat, can be compared to different soups and that type of thing as well. Whereas braising traditionally involves larger cuts of meat that require a longer period of cooking to make them more tender and more palatable. And typically what we do is we'll sear that food or saute that food. And what that does is it causes the exterior of that product, whether it be vegetable or beef or poultry or lamb or veal, it forces the exterior to caramelize. And when that meat caramelizes, it gets a much more rich flavor. We are not searing, nor do we ever sear with the intent of keeping the moisture in the product. That's not what it does. It changes the complexity of the flavors. So by searing, we're going to develop what we call that fond on the bottom of the pot that we use. And then we also caramelize the exterior of the product. A lot of meats oftentimes will be coated in flour, and that helps with the moisture, but it also helps thicken the liquid at the very end. And then braising traditionally will have a little bit less liquid. The liquid will only come up about halfway, 2/3 of the way, versus a stew where the actual product is submerged. in the actual liquid. These are some great dishes down here. I had to include this one down here in the bottom right-hand corner for Chef Suzanne because I don't want her to think I'm discriminating. So there's a great looking dish of some chicken down in here. It looks like it's got some cipollini onions in it, which are absolutely fantastic. Then we have, this looks like a short rib. And then I'm not sure what this is over here, but it could be lamb T-bones or something else that was braised. Absolutely delicious. Stewing, like we were talking about just a moment ago, smaller cuts of meat, larger amounts of liquid, and a lot of times they'll actually cook even longer because the meat is so tough. So we really don't stew too many vegetables because of the fact that the vegetables will actually break down during the stewing process. Is that correct, Chef Suzanne? Stewing? Is it a stewing process?
I would call it a stewing process. That makes good sense.
Right.
I'm so excited about this. You just have no idea. These pictures just make me so happy.
I know. Everything looks so good, doesn't it?
They do.
Yeah. And it's actually, stewing is a great technique that we use when we make cream of walk-in stew. I don't know if anybody's ever made that, where we clean our walk-in refrigerator out. We have pieces of the top round that we roasted, or what's that, Chef Suzanne?
I was always taught that's reach-in madness.
Reach-in madness. That's another good one. Yeah. So we have cream of reach-in madness, we'll say. And so stewing, just think smaller cuts of meat, larger amounts of liquid. And just a little bit of insight, the way that you'll end up doing this once you are in industry is obviously we cannot braise something to order. It doesn't work that way. That's why braising is such a great technique for restaurants, because what we'll do for braised short ribs, for example, is we'll sear them off and we'll put them into our square head, and I'll show you what that is here in just a moment. And we'll braise them for several hours until that meat becomes very tender. At that point, we'll pull them out of the liquid, put them onto a rack, allow them to cool in the reach-in, and then we'll take that liquid, strain it and reduce it, and then that becomes the sauce for the braised short ribs. When we get an order for braised short ribs off of our hotline or our service line, we'll throw it in the oven or throw it in the convection oven or whatever the case is, something to heat it up quickly, and then we'll sauce it and serve it. So, you know, a braised meat will generally take, a good piece of braised meat or poultry will take 2, 3, 4 hours to cook. But when you walk into a restaurant, miraculously, you can get it within a few minutes, and that's the reason why. Other places as well will actually keep that product in a steam table, which I don't care for because it continues to cook it throughout the course of the night. Isn't that right?
I was just going to say that's because it just keeps cooking, which in theory you'd think would make it better, but it can actually dry it out, and it doesn't necessarily do it any favors sometimes when things overcook. Even when they're overcooking in a liquid, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
To continue to cook something once it's already done.
So you will see some facilities that do that, usually a little bit of a quicker style service, the higher volume where they can move that product very, very quickly. But for those of us that are in a different style of service, we prefer to heat it to order. It makes a much higher quality product. So moving on here, we talked just a second ago about a square head, and in industry, we use several different pieces of equipment to braise in. At home, you might find yourself braising in a Pyrex dish or something like that. In industry, we don't use anything like that. This is a look at the type of equipment that we use to braise in. This is a tilt skillet. These two units right here, these are very, very common in industry. Some of the larger facilities will have them. I'm sure at the convention center there, Chef Suzanne, they had quite a few of them back in there. We'll use these units not only to saute in, to do scrambled eggs in, to bake soups in, but they also work really well for braising. They hold quite a volume. They come in different sizes, 50 quarts, 40 quarts, 30 quarts. And then these little wheels here on the side of them, you turn the wheels, and then the whole unit will lift up and allow you to drain all of your moisture out of there. And if your facility is designed correctly, you will have a nice floor drain under there, and you won't have to worry about that. Up here, we have our rondo. You know, I think that's kind of an old school term. If you can think of a newer term, Chef Suzanne, that they call the rondo.
I've always heard it called a rondo or the brazier.
Yeah, the rondo or the brazier. This is quite a large pan. I think they're about 2.5 feet in diameter, and they're about 10 inches deep. They're made out of a heavy aluminum base, and oftentimes in industry, we'll put that over a couple of burners. That's how large they are. And we'll get it quite hot. We'll sear our product and braise our product right inside that unit. And then the square head here, these are actually quite large as well. They're about 28 inches long and about 20 inches wide and about 12 inches deep. So if you're going to do this over burners, it's probably going to take up about 4 burners on your stove. But we'll braise in those as well, roast meats in them and all sorts of different other things. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne?
Oh yes, that's good stuff.
Is that the proper name?
I've never heard it called a square head, to be perfectly honest. I don't know that I've ever worked anywhere that called them that. I think they just mostly got called roasting pans. So I kind of wish after all these years I had known they were called square heads other places. That would be so much more useful.
It's kind of funny. I think once everyone gets into industry and really starts working, you know, I had somebody that came around the corner the other day and said, I'm looking for a curly Kate, right? And, you know, I know what a curly Kate is, but I don't think very many other people know. And that's a stainless steel sponge, the wire mesh sponge. And the original label of that was curly Kate. And so that's the way it became known in the industry. But so there's all these terms that you will learn to call particular pieces of equipment. The Queen Mary, for example, right? And some people might refer to that as a rolling storage rack. However, a Queen Mary can be a very large, generally about 6 feet long, multiple shelves on it, and it can either be warm or just for refrigerated purposes. So once you get in the industry, if anybody says, go get the Queen, that's what they're talking about. So we use all sorts of different language. And then moving on, some examples of braised meats here. It kind of runs across all different cultures, which I really like. They find it in many different places. This is some braised pork belly, which is a dish that I absolutely love. Looks a little bit Vietnamese with the cilantro and the julienne vegetables. And then we have some honey braised lamb shank. We call those volcano shanks as well. They're the foreshank of the lamb. Very meaty, very super delicious. Unfortunately, the portion size on those is pretty obnoxious, so kind of hard to sell to a little old lady that just wants, you know, lamb. And then over here, you know, just to run to a different culture, carnitas are such a big dish in Mexico, and carnitas are braised in fat, literally. So that's absolutely a wonderful dish as well. And then braised vegetables that we're working on this week. Collard greens, I think, is probably one of the most common ones that we see a lot or hear about a lot. Isn't that right, Chef Suzanne? You like braised collard greens?
I do, actually. They're just so common. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, at least from the state of New York, and so I had never had them until I moved down south. And they're everywhere here, and they're so good. They're so good. Oh yeah,
they're the best. And it's kind of funny because you think braised vegetables, let's go healthy, right? And but it's always done with bacon or smoked ham hock. And that's one of the most common types of braised vegetables. We see that quite a bit. Not so much out here in the West Coast, but I think more in the Texarkana to the east. You probably run into quite a bit of that as well. And then this is a chicken dish, and you know, but it had the small vegetables in it, so I thought that was appropriate. And then a lot of vegetables that we like to braise for longer periods of times are what we refer to as root vegetables. Root vegetables can be tubers. Tubers are generally root vegetables that grow underneath the soil, such as parsnips, turnips, carrots, beets, that type of thing. All those braise really well. And then here's another picture of the collard greens down here at the bottom. I love them with vinegar. It just makes me happy. Now, there's two different types of braised vegetables that we are working with this week in this class. One is a quick braised vegetable. That is something that you traditionally would do over your gas burner or on your stovetop. I prefer to sear those vegetables quickly. You could do baby carrots. You could do baby squash. Vegetables that are going to cook quickly. Asparagus cooks fairly quick. Pencil asparagus does. And some other things, peas, etc., etc. Those will braise very quickly. And so I like to saute them first in a little bit of butter or olive oil, which helps caramelize the sugars that naturally occur. And then you will add some broth. Traditionally, a chicken stock is fairly neutral. So we like to use that a lot. Let them braise for a few minutes on your stovetop. Take the vegetables out, let the liquid reduce, add the liquid back in, and it makes a nice glaze for your vegetables. A long braised vegetable would be one such as a carrot or parsnip, rutabaga, or turnip. That's a larger, more fibrous vegetable. I like to saute those as well. They can be very high in sugar, so I enjoy caramelizing them because that just changes the complexity of the flavors. And then you're going to sear them. You can add your choice of herbs, your choice of broth. A lot of people like to add a sachet. And then you'll add your liquid, cover them. You can throw them into your oven for a period of time, generally around 30, 45 minutes or so. Will braise your vegetables quite well. Collard greens, if you choose to do that for this week's assignment, that's kind of a little bit more of a long braised green. It does not cook extremely quick. You want to give yourself about 45 minutes to an hour to do that. So that's what we call a long braised vegetables. If you are going to be doing your collard greens this week, one of the big things, they can get a little bit smelly, but what we'll do is we'll pull that, what do you call the centerpiece there, Chef Suzanne? The stem part?
Stem. Some people call it the core.
Core. Yeah, so you're going to want to make sure you take a knife and you cut that area out of your lettuce or out of your greens. That will help reduce on that smell. A lot of people really get into preserving the color on these dishes. Chlorophyll, which is the green color in green leafy vegetables, is kind of a funny thing. It's kind of an old school thought that we used to add baking soda to the water or to the braising liquid, which would help reduce the levels of oxygen, which would prevent that from changing color. However, that robs your braised vegetable of some minerals and vitamins, and so does the cooking process. So basically, by the time you get done eating, you're left with a bowl full of fiber. Do you agree with that, Chef Suzanne?
I would agree. I also think that if too much is used, it affects the texture too and makes it kind of weird. It's almost like it breaks it down so much, so fast. It does weird stuff to add it.
Right. And I know a lot of people like to keep that color. I would rather have my minerals, vitamins, and flavorful natural food than the vitamins. Let's take a look at a quick method here for the collard greens. We're going to walk through this video real quick and see how it goes. I know this is elementary, but one of the most important things is to line your mise en place out first. There's nothing worse than starting a dish and then realizing the bacon is frozen. Oops. Oh. Okay. Sorry about that. My finger was happy. Now, with braised collard greens, you can do bacon, and that's very, very traditional. Make sure that you sweat that bacon to get the fat out of it, render it, so to speak, because you want that fat to get into the leaves to season it and give good flavor. However, a lot of certain regions in the United States like to use ham hock, a smoked ham hock, which will give additional flavor, and that's widely available in your grocery store. And then a lot of newer chefs are trying different things, like a hard chorizo from Spain. That works extremely well. Prosciutto also gives a nice bite, some nice texture to it. Serrano hams. So if you want to try and be a little bit different, don't be afraid. He adds a sachet to this, and I would assume within the sachet there's bay leaf and there's thyme and cracked black pepper. That is your call. That is your decision. A sachet is a nice technique to have mastered when you get into industry. However, that's going to be up to you in the long run. One of the keys to success when it comes to braising vegetables is during the cooking process itself, you want to make sure that you keep a lid over the product. You are not trying to reduce your sauce at this point in time. So keep the lid over the top of the collard greens, or if you're doing a quick braise of baby vegetables or whatever the case is, make sure that you keep the lid over the top. If you are going to cut vegetables to do your quick braise vegetables, do not do a julienne cut, do not do a brunoise cut. It's going to get lost in there, and Chef Suzanne's going to have her little magnifying glass out there saying, where is this stuff? So make sure that you do a larger cut, such as a rondelle. A bâtonnet is perfectly acceptable. A large dice at 3/4 inch is perfectly acceptable as well. Last week, or the week before, we talked about poaching, where we had to make sure that we simmered things in order to prevent them from breaking up. It's not such a concern if you're doing a long braise on a very fibrous vegetable. It can be at a boil during the cooking process. You're not going to do any damage to the product. However, if you're working with a very delicate vegetable, such as a zucchini or a crookneck squash, something of that, you might want to make sure that you do watch your boiling. Please note that he seasoned the product at the end of the cooking process. The reason that you want to do that, and the reason that we traditionally season most everything when it comes to broths or liquidy substances at the end, is because there is a loss of liquid and a reduction of that product that takes place. So if we season the braising liquid at the very beginning, it might taste great. However, through the cooking process, there is going to be some reduction of the liquid, and that salt is going to concentrate and become saltier. Come back. Okay, there we go. At this point, it's important to notice that he is removing the collard greens from the braising liquid with a spider. It's the round thing that he's pulling it out, allows the liquid to drain down, and then he's going to reduce the liquid. Please take notice of how many times that he's tasted this food throughout the process. That is one big mistake that a lot of young culinarians have a tendency to make. You should always keep an ample supply of tasting spoons in your kitchen at all points in time, because once you get into industry, everything you make has your face on it. Never assume anything tastes good. So that made me hungry just watching that.
I was getting ready for that to finish so that I could tell you that I'm glad that I was muted, because my stomach was growling really loud. And I was like, gosh, that looks so good. Oh, that's too funny. I was thinking the same thing that was making me hungry.
Yeah, that's an absolutely fantastic dish that I love to eat. I hijacked a video that I wanted to show this, and I don't know if I should, but I wanted to show this because it's kind of a it's a really cool video. It's only about a minute long, but it talks about doing some stovetop braising, some quick vegetables, and the technique that's done in this I really appreciate, because I think it's just totally cool. So let's take a look at it real quick here.
Braising is a really tasty way of cooking vegetables, and the added benefit of braising is it creates a lovely cooking liquor that you can add to sauces and gravies. So here I've got around 600 grams of baby vegetables, which serves around 4 people.
So the baby vegetables are ideal for doing stovetop or a quick braise. Baby vegetables are available in the market. You just have to look for them. Oh, I'm like way off tonight with my fingers here.
Braising is a really tasty way of cooking vegetables, and the added benefit of braising is it creates a lovely cooking liquor that you can add to sauces and gravies. So here I've got around 600 grams of baby vegetables, which serves around 4 people. Baby vegetables are so sweet and tender, but don't worry, ordinary vegetables will be just as good. I've got a large pan here, and to that I'm just going to add about 50 grams of butter. Next, I'm going to add my vegetables, evenly space them out, and add enough stock to just cover the veg. Finally, add a couple of bay leaves and season with salt and pepper. Place over a high heat and bring to the boil. So now that's boiling, reduce the heat to its lowest setting and cover and simmer for around 10 to 12 minutes until the vegetables are just...
So she's concerned that those vegetables are going to break up in there, so that's why she's lowered the temperature on that. You also notice she did not sear her vegetables at the very beginning, which is personal preference. I like the sear.
Tender. Then remove the lid and boil the liquid for 2 to 3 minutes, or until bubbling and reduce to a thick syrup-like glaze. Remove the bay leaves before turning the vegetables in the glaze a few times. So these braised vegetables are now perfectly cooked, and you can serve them just as they are, or you can take the vegetables out and use a cooking liquor for the base of a lovely sauce or gravy. Braised vegetables make such a tasty and delicious side dish.
So I think that's just a different perspective that is so good. So don't overlook braised vegetables. It's a very, very important assignment. Should you choose to get a little bit more curious, don't be afraid to do endive. Braised endive is very, very common, which is a vegetable that's grown with very little light. It's very, very bitter. But if you do braise a very bitter vegetable, don't be afraid to add a little bit of sugar to balance it out, the bitterness, and that works quite well. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone?
Like, when adding sugar, does it have to be in the beginning, or you can add it at any time?
That's a really good question. It depends on the size of the vegetable, that number one, that you are working with. And generally, the endive will be a little bit smaller. They're only about yay long and about that big around. And I prefer to add it towards the end to the broth, because the Belgium endive will be bitter, or the radicchio will be bitter if you choose to braise that. However, you remove it from the liquid, reduce the liquid with a little bit of sugar in it. That makes the sauce a little bit sweet, and then the sweetness balances out against the bitterness in the vegetable and just creates a really nice flavor for your guest.
Okay.
That answer your question?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. And let's take a look at this week's assignment over here. Of course, we have our self-identification photo, which is required. And then we have our mise en place, demonstrating proper station setup. And then sanitizing bucket, which is make sure that you have your sanitizer strip. Your quick braised vegetable, cut and washed, GBD on the vegetable. Don't worry about the GBD. Golden brown, delicious, since we're not doing it necessarily. But you want to take a picture of the vegetable simmering, and then family style plated dishes with appropriate garnish. And then your long braised vegetable, make sure you have a picture of it simmering, a picture of it plated. Very, very important. And also do not forget your narrative this week. This is a great exercise to practice your narrative with, because there's going to be a lot of flavors, a lot of aromas that are taking place. So there'll be a lot of information to describe in that narrative. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody?
Nope.
Crystal?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
I do have a comment.
Sure.
When it comes to braising, actually any assignment for any course, don't assume that if you Google or look up braised vegetables, or if you've got carrots, you decide to braise carrots. Don't assume that just because that word braise is in the recipe that you find, that recipe is a true braise. So make sure you read it and look through it and make sure that the steps are right. Because ultimately that's what we're looking for, is the technique. It's okay to get inspiration from videos and recipes that you find online, but make sure it's actually braised. Because I think this is when I have started seeing students go, oh, well, I have some turnips. I'm going to look for the first recipe for braised turnips that comes up when I Google it, and then turns out it's not actually braised, that it's done with some other technique. It's poached, or it's even sauteed. So it's not necessarily about if you find a recipe that you like and you want to use as inspiration, that's fine, but make sure you're meeting the criteria for the assignment.
A lot of people have poached the term braised. Did I say that right, Chef Suzanne? Okay, so make sure that you are, we just took a look at some videos. We did a lot of in-depth description of what the product is. So if you are seeing a recipe for braised vegetables that calls for grilling and basting, it's probably not going to fit within the spec of the rubric. So very, very important. Any other questions, anyone? Ladies and gents, let's not forget that discussion forum that is due. Initial post this Saturday, response to 2 other students no later than Tuesday at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then we also have our knowledge check that is due along with our assignment that we want to have into Chef Suzanne no later than this Sunday to help you out in the long run. Once again, if anybody has any questions or needs any help, don't be afraid to reach out and ask. We are here to support you and here to help you succeed. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.